I have dealt with drug dealers. I have dealt with Russian mafia tied-in guys. Never really nervous. This guy was actually a chief of police. At this point in my life, I was a little nervous.
That's how we do it in the South.
What's going on, guys, and welcome to Rabbit's Used Cars. You know, it's kind of crazy, this business. And I've got a fun story because you guys like scandalous stuff. And this could have been really bad. And it actually was really bad for the people that got caught. But as usual, to tell you this story, I got to stop and tell you another story to kind of bring you up to speed. You got to understand the business that I'm in. I'm in collector car sales. Collector car sales is different from any other type of automotive dealership. And, you know, you're probably thinking cars is cars. No, it's not. You got to understand, every used car lot you see, every new car lot you see, 98% of those car lots are floor planned. When I say floor plan, that means every one of those cars are owned by a bank or a lending institution of some type. And they sell those cars on a float or a floor plan. A float being they've got 30 days to sell it and make the loan whole, or a floor plan where they just have a revolving line of credit. Basically works like a big credit card with really shitty interest rates as a rule. But the whole key is not to be sitting on them long and moving fast. And that's typically how most new car and a lot of your used car dealerships work. And you'll see in the used car world some smaller dealerships that have 5, 6, 7 cars. Now, granted, they own those cars. You know, these guys are, self-funded, I guess. But any of these big dealerships you see, they're all going to be floor planned more times than not. That being said, let's get to collector cars. Collector cars are totally different. You can't floor plan these cars like that. You can't, there's not a lending institution that's going to give me $1 million to go buy cars. So we have to have these cars. Now, in certain states, South Carolina not being one of them, you can sell consignment, which means you can sell other people's cars. So when you go to dealerships like Street Side or Gateway or insert Fast Lane, insert any of those guys, those are consignment dealerships. So all the cars they have, they don't own. They're selling other people's cars. So then you got the guys like me, and there's a lot of us that sell collector cars. I own every car in this building. This is the thing. You have to own these. In the state of South Carolina, I can't sell other people's cars. I have to sell my cars. And it's a very expensive business to keep inventory, and you can't sell from an empty basket. An inventory is a double-edged sword, especially in this line of the car field. When you're selling Ford Tauruses and S10 pickup trucks, having 10 of each on the floor is not a bad thing. When you're selling OBS trucks, I don't need 5 because the more they have to look at, the more they have to think about, the more they have to be confused. I try to buy the nicest ones I can and move from there. So you want inventory, but you don't want too much inventory. You also want, or let me rephrase that, I want how I do things. I'm really big on having a little something for everybody, from a $14,000 truck to a $70,000 Bronco to, a $100,000 C8 Corvette. We got a little something for everybody. I love to keep them in that teens and 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and keep that kind of inventory where you're not exclusive to these top tier buyers. And really, it makes good business sense because I'll be honest with you, as a rule, I'll make just as much money off the lower end vehicles as I do the higher end ones. And it also brings people into the hobby. I'm really big in this. You got to think my entire life has been around old cars, and I love it. It's my livelihood, but it's also my life. It's my passion. I love these things. It was a family affair. I've talked about it numerous times. My grandfather and my dad, we bonded over these cars, and I know how special they are to me, so I love seeing people get into this hobby and keeping it going. Especially in this age of, cell phones and internet and yada yada. It's a great thing and a bad thing, sometimes. So it's nice to put that phone down and enjoy something, a classic, and drive and something to tinker with in the garage. It's just good for the soul, in my opinion. So I love having entry-level cars for that very reason. And then, of course, the guys that got 5 or 6, they're ready to step up to bat and buy a big boy car. We got those too. And everything in between. That being said, moving on to our story today, this is a very hard business to get your foot in the door in. You can sell 1 or 2 and keep 1 or 2, but when you start keeping 12, 14, 15, 16, it adds up quick. You got to think about it. There's over $600,000 worth of inventory sitting around me in this building, not counting the building, not counting anything inside the building, just cars. And that's a lot of cash for any damn body. And especially when it's out of pocket. It's not borrowed money. This is daddy's money. So, that being said, it's hard to do this business, but I want to give you a little homework. You look at all the collector car dealerships in the world, and you'll notice where they're the biggest, where you see them most. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in a little secret. It's going to be Florida. And the reason I say Florida is also, now look, where the most cocaine goes through and the most shadiest stuff goes through. Boom, Florida. These businesses literally are a money launderer's dream. And, there's a lot of not so good dealerships out there. And I'm not here to spill the beans on them. I don't care. It's not my business. So what I'm telling you about today is I had a man approach me. And this has been a few years back. And like I said, I kind of got to keep the terms and the details a little vague. This guy was actually a chief of police for a small southern town, and we're very well known, respected guy, and he really took a liking to me. And I knew about the police part of it, but I didn't know a whole lot about him. This guy, he had a few old cars, and that's kind of naturally how we connected. And, he'd invite you over. Hey, come by the house. I want to show you something, And he was a real big gun collector. He always had the cool guns. And I'm not like guns are fine and all that, but I'm not the biggest tackleberry gun guy either. I like them. They're neat, whatever. I can see why people really like them. I'm not a diehard collector or anything like that. But he said, I want to show you something. And you got to think about it. You're the chief of police for a local town, and you've got 2 really nice collector cars, and you got a nice, gorgeous, he lived in this brick ranch house. And it was so fun. You walk in, and it was decorated to the nines. I mean, it was beautiful inside. And the first thing I think of is, I know how much cops make. And even if you've been doing it for years, this is getting out there. But there again, I'm not here to, evaluate the property. I'm just here hanging out. We go downstairs, he had a basement, and we go downstairs, and there was a projector, like a TV room, like a theater, and he had the theater seats, and I'm like, man, this is wild. You would never even know this was under this house, because it was like a 1-story ranch. So we get there, and there was a bookshelf, and they had like DVDs and like Blu-rays and all this stuff on that shelf. And he goes, you want to see something really cool? Sure. And he literally takes that shelf and pulls it, and it slides out of the way. This whole big, it's literally ceiling to floor, and it slides out of the way. It's about 4 foot wide. It slides out of the way. It goes down a hallway, finished sheetrock, literally looks like the rest of the house. But you walk on through, and you can see, it's probably 10, 15 feet, and you look to the right-hand side, and there was literally like a fucking bank safe door. Now you've got my attention. And the things that are running through my mind as I walk down this dimly lit hallway is, why the fuck does this chief of police have a fucking bank safe under his house? And then you got to think about the thousands upon thousands of dollars somebody paid to put this son of a bitch under this house. And I'm like, yeah, and he's telling me about how it's all concrete, yada yada, cinder block, whatever. And something funny, my phone, I got a text when I went downstairs and I pulled my phone in my pocket, he said, yeah, that's not going to work down here. And I looked, it had no service. And that's when he started telling about all the concrete. And he said there was 8 inches of concrete above our head, yada, yada. So he turns the dials on the safe door. I mean, this thing's literally like a bank safe. And I mean, I'll never forget, like when you open the door, it's metal, stainless or whatever. And it had those big, you buy a safe from like Harbor Freight or Lowe's or something, it's got the little, this thing had like the rods that went like that. I mean, they were huge. There's like 6 of them in it. And I'm like, holy shit. And I swear to you on all things holy, I've seen some shady shit in my life. I mean, I've told you stories about sitting in the middle of one of the largest stolen truck rings in the country. Not nervous. I have dealt with drug dealers. I have dealt with Russian mafia tied in guys. Never really nervous. This point in my life, I was a little nervous. He opened the door. I've never seen so many fucking guns in my life. And when I say guns, I'm not talking about like hanging up on the wall displayed. I'm talking about stockpiled. I've never seen so many fucking guns in my life. And I mean, this was insane. Like I said, I'm not the biggest gun aficionado. I mean, I know what they look like and revolvers and all that. And he had shelves of handguns. But the thing that was crazy was like the automatic rifles, like ARs and like machine guns. They were just lined up down the wall. I mean, you got to think a 20-foot wall, and you couldn't jam another fucking long gun down that wall. I mean, they're just stacked. And there were some hanging, and there were shelves. I mean, just handguns and bullets and just all kinds of stuff. And he goes, it's a little side hustle I have. I'm like, damn, it's a hell of a side hustle you got here. And he goes, what do you think about that? He said, you like shooting guns? And I said, yeah, I mean, I like going to the shooting range. And he said, we'll have to go shoot sometime. And he kind of made light of all of it, but I was just blown away. I mean, there had to be 1,000 guns in this damn building. I mean, literally in the safe or whatever the hell you want to call it. We were down there maybe 7 or 8 minutes max. We walk back out and he shuts the shelf door or whatever you want to call it, and we go back upstairs, and we're actually going on a golf cart ride. It's got a really nice lifted golf cart, which that's a big thing here in South Carolina. Everybody's got their little golf carts riding around, and we're cruising around and riding around his neighborhood. And he goes, Rob, have you ever looked for a backer? He said, maybe like a silent partner. And I knew where this was headed. He goes, I've got to find somewhere to invest. And I told him, I said, listen, bud, I appreciate that. And I really, really makes me feel good that someone thinks enough of my business and what I'm doing to want to invest their money in me. I mean, that's a big thing, when someone puts their money in you, I mean, apparently you're doing something right. And I said, I'm honored by that. But I said, I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm a little old school, a little hard-headed. And I said, I'll be honest with you, kind of started on my own. I think, try to keep it that way. But I appreciate it nonetheless. And I really didn't want to dig no deeper into this. And he was like, yeah, Rob, that's fine. And, we rode around a golf cart, really never another word was said about it. Well, we get back to his house, and, and we leave, or I leave, and, everything's fine. And, I talk to him every once in a while in passing, or you bump into him somewhere, and, everything was fine, Well, I noticed a guy that was starting to sell more and more cars in town. And he just, overnight, he went from 1 or 2 to, he had 20. And nice stuff, really high end. And next thing you know, he's building a brand new building. And next thing you know, he's this and this. And then he's really popping up. And this is right before the social media boom. Like you know what I'm saying? Like, if this guy was on social media, he would have blew up big. But this is like right when Facebook was just for like hooking up. So he's just taking off. And I'm noticing this guy. And I'm like, where the hell did he get his money from? Like, what happened? When you see someone just instantly just like damn, did he win the lottery or something like that? I mean, he probably bought $300,000 worth of cars in a week. He added to his little pile of cars over there. And, we seen them all the time because back then the big way we sold cars was, obviously we had Craigslist, but we also had, going to events, and you would bring these cars, and we had these things called car corrals. And you would actually take cars to events. And this guy was bringing 7 or 8 cars, where before he had 1 car. And you've seen these cars that he's bringing to this event, and keep in mind the transport costs of bringing 7 or 8 cars to an event that's hundreds of miles away. And I'm like, man, So he's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing. I love to keep an eye on the competition, but there again, you can't focus on the competition because that's what messes you up. You got to focus on you and keep moving forward. And, so I keep it in my lane and keep trucking, Interesting nonetheless, and, I wish him nothing but the best of luck. Fast forward 6 months later. Did you hear about old what's his name? No, I didn't. Man, he got raided by the cops. Really? I said, I noticed he had a lot of new inventory and got big quick. He said, yeah, they were laundering money through there. Well, lo and behold, next thing you know, I said, hey, did you hear about old so-and-so? The chief of police? Yeah, he got popped. Come to find out, he found an investor. And that investor was my friend with the vault. And they're both still in prison to this day. And I am so glad that my grandfather instilled, and my father too, instilled their values in me in doing business. And it's a good and a bad because business has changed a lot. So you gotta be able to diversify these values. But you got to think about it. My grandfather, when he started that truck shop in 1968, I'm sure several people want to jump in on board. Hey, Jimmy, let me invest in this. Let me do this. And I'm not saying they want to money launder through a truck shop, but he said, you do it on your own. He said, you got to think about it. Sometimes you can have way too many chefs in the kitchen. And that mentality, I've always kind of stuck with it. You got to have good people working with you. But when it comes down to brass tacks and your money, less is more, especially in this case. And I'll be honest with you, that's served me right over the years, so I think we're going to keep it that way. But anyway, made for a good story, and so glad that I didn't get weak and be like, you know what, I want to shoot up right quick. I want to get big right now. Got to pace yourself for these kind of things, guys. We'll catch you next time at Rabbit's Used Cars.